In episode 11 of the CompTIA CySA Plus training series, we are going to begin domain 4, which is on reporting and communication, and we're going to be talking about vulnerability reporting and the metrics that go into that. My name is Hank Hackerson, your trainer for today, and to get more videos like this one, make sure that you like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Domain 4 is the lightest weight domain of the entire training series and the certification exam. But it's actually, I would say, a very important phase in the overall cybersecurity process. It has to do with the communication that you have between your various team members, your team at large, your company, the stakeholders, upper management, I should say, and executives, everything that goes along in that communication. And the concepts that we talk about are going to be pretty simple, to be honest with you. It's just that they're really important. And when it comes down to creating reports, delivering reports, communicating those reports to various teams, and kind of prepping and formatting those reports so that everybody can understand the importance of them, all of these things are really, really key concepts when it comes down to cybersecurity at large. A lot of it has to do with the communication between the team members and various teams in general. And this is the key concept that we're going to be talking about today. So, for example, turning the vulnerability data, scan results, risk scores, remediation status into clear, actionable, and defensible information for different audiences, like the technical teams, management, executives, auditors, and regulators. So this is kind of the overview of what we're going to be talking about in chapter 11, which is for vulnerability reporting and metrics. And then we have one more chapter inside of domain 4, and that will be it. We'll have like a conclusion video and wrap everything up. And then after that, we'll pretty much be done with CompTIA CySA Plus. In the CS0-004 examination, there's an emphasis that is being placed on the modern reporting formats, for example, risk, scorecards, executive summaries, and action plans, the meaningful metrics and KPIs, key performance indicators, which is just beyond there's this many vulnerabilities, right? So you have to look at the actual metrics that we talked about in the last video as well, and we're going to talk about them more in this video. Identifying and documenting inhibitors to remediation, why things are delayed. So we're just trying to figure out what those things are, documenting them, and hopefully fixing them, decreasing them so that we can remediate faster and mitigate faster. And then trends analysis and service level agreements that are relevant to the various entities that you will work with outside of your actual company, and even service level agreements inside of your company for what you promise, what is promised to you, and everything along those lines. So there are key emphasis points on these specific bullets right here. And really it all comes down to communication, reporting, and making sure that everything is understood along the way. So the real world truth in 2026 and moving forward, and what it was in 2025, is that the best vulnerability managers aren't the ones who find the most issues. They're the ones who get the most dangerous ones fixed fastest. And that comes down to excellent reporting and stakeholder communication. So this is all key when it comes down to the overall scope of cybersecurity. And if we were to think about everything that we've talked about so far, from the security analysts dealing with the security engineers, dealing with the incident responders and the digital forensics investigators, dealing with management, dealing with pen testers, and the C-suite people, the legal team, the marketing team, all of that has to do with communication. The level 1 analyst has to communicate with the level 2 analyst, who has to communicate with the immediate management, who will have to communicate with incident response or security engineering, etc., etc. So it's all about communication, taking really vast amounts of data, very complex data, and communicating it clearly into understandable and actionable pieces of intelligence. That's how information turns into intelligence. So let's learn how to speak both security geek and boardroom fluently. And of course, we're going to have a quick little note from Hackaholics Anonymous before we do a quick little recap and domain overview, and then we'll dive deep into the contents. To get access to the CYSA Plus book, the practice questions, the exclusive episode downloads, and to get access to the CompTIA Linux Plus, Network Plus, PenTest Plus, and Security Plus course contents, and to get access to me via Discord plus all the future perks and content rollouts, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. We have 4 tiers: the Supporter, Agent, Guardian, and Master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The Agent, Guardian, and Master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below. It's the link that says Join Hackaholics Anonymous. I look forward to seeing you in the Discord chats. If not, I look forward to seeing you in the comment section. Until then, happy hacking and stay out of trouble. Domain 4 will test your ability to create clear, accurate, and audience-appropriate reports, to track and communicate progress using meaningful metrics, to influence decision makers to allocate resources effectively, arguably the toughest task that will be presented to you right there. Documenting barriers to remediation honestly and constructively. All of these things tie hand in hand together. They're all interconnected. And really, really honestly, the biggest one is going to be this third bullet right here. This will be the main factor as to why so many companies are still behind with their security posture, why so many companies that are massive companies still get hacked and they don't fix things until they've been hacked, and they just don't understand what it means to put emphasis and prioritize cybersecurity. They simply do not get it, and they wait until it's too late and the damage has already been done. So in this specific domain, you will get the skill set and the information to separate yourself from just being an analyst to actually becoming a leader. Poor reporting equals stalled remediation. Excellent reporting equals faster fixes, better security posture, and stronger career trajectory. And that's what you want. Believe it or not, it's not just about your technical skill sets. It's also about the way that you can communicate, the way that you do communicate, and your emphasis on this skill set. We call this a soft skill set. Communication is known as a soft skill, but the soft skills are the ones that are becoming more and more important, especially with the age of AI and AI being able to do so many things. The key skill sets are going to come with you being able to relay information, create reports that are understandable, and get your point across so that you can influence people like the decision makers to allocate resources and so on and so forth. So first we're going to talk about vulnerability reporting. We will have 4 subtitles underneath it. The first one being compliance reporting. And so this depends on your specific industry and your organization, the type of data and intel and systems that you actually use. This will determine what kind of compliance you actually have to abide by, what kind of regulations you actually have to abide by. For example, if you are dealing with payment card information, so the PCI is the payment card industry standard for collecting and maintaining, holding onto people's credit cards and their debit cards and things like that. So there need to be quarterly external scans, annual internal scans, and all of them have to have high findings remediated, meaning if there's a high severity finding or if there's a high priority finding, it needs to be remediated right away. And that's if you have PCI information. And by the way, this is not just all of what you have to do. If you have PCI information, there are many other things that you also have to do. These are just some of the key markers or the key types of activities that you have to do to maintain compliance and to do proper reporting for that specific type of regulation. Then there's the ISO 27001, which is very, very common, and we refer to it a lot. This has to do with the vulnerability management process. The code is A.12.6 right here. And so this, again, has to be documenting the vulnerability management process, specifically your process for managing vulnerabilities inside of your company. Then there's the FedRAMP NIST 853. These kind of go in the same breath, on the same spirit. This has to do with continuous monitoring, the point of acquisition, or point of action, I should say, point of management, plan of action, and milestones, all of the tracking of those things. And it all has to do with your overall methodology for monitoring things regularly and continuously. So these would be the regulations for that. And then we have the SEC Rule 10b-18 for 2024-2025, which has kind of just strung along and stayed with us. And this has to do with material cybersecurity incidents, which have to be disclosed within 4 business days, and many vulnerabilities become material when exploited. In a previous chapter, I may have misquoted this, and I apologize, because I said that if it's been for at least 4 business days, then you would need to report it, but it actually means that it needs to be reported within 4 business days. So I expect that somebody will fact check me in a previous episode, and it will go ahead and correct that specific explanation of that rule. And I apologize in advance if you're the person who fact checked me, or if you're a person who did not fact check me and you believed me and I gave you incorrect information. SEC Rule 10b-18 has to do with reporting within 4 business days any material cybersecurity incident. And material changes have to do with whether you're being held at ransom, whether you were actually hacked and data was stolen and you lost customer information, or you suffered financial losses, or whatever, any kind of major actual change that applies to the material aspects of your business and your industry and your clients, all of that stuff falls under this rule right here. So as you can imagine, these things can apply to all, if not most businesses. So you have, PCI DSS has to do with if you're collecting and maintaining payment card information, sure. But if you're dealing with anything that has to do with vulnerabilities, which is probably every single company, you have to abide by ISO 27001. If you're dealing with any kind of monitoring and plan of action and milestones tracking, you would have to abide by these rules. If you're dealing with any kind of industry, you have to abide by the SEC rule, because it doesn't matter what happens, as long as some kind of material cybersecurity change happens, you have to report it within 4 business days. So a lot of these things apply to every single business, and then some of them apply to singular businesses, or at least businesses are inside of singular, specific niche categories. For example, if you're holding payment card information, or if you're dealing with health information, you have to deal with HIPAA, etc. So the reports must show evidence of process, not just results. So we did X, Y, and Z according to such and such plan, and these were the results that we got. So you actually have to show, what plan you were following, what steps you actually took, and what the results of those steps were. That is the bare minimum of what your report must show, so that people who are looking at it from a compliance perspective can understand exactly what is going on, and if you're actually trying to abide by the rules that are on the screen, and many other rules that would apply to other industries as well. So we have now metrics and key performance indicators. So you got to move beyond we found this many vulnerabilities. This is essentially a useless metric. It can tell you the type of activity that's going on, but it may not necessarily mean anything, because the vulnerabilities themselves could be of low value. They could be low-level vulnerabilities, and they may not necessarily have any kind of an impact, and now you just have a giant list of vulnerabilities. And then there are some of them that also have not been confirmed, if you remember from the vulnerability management domain that we went through in the vulnerability management videos. One of the key things we talked about was actually validating the vulnerabilities that we found to make sure that they really are vulnerabilities that are current and relevant to what we're going through. So the key performance indicators that are favorites of the 0-4 examination would be the mean time to remediate, so MTTR. We have high, critical, medium, critical, low, and critical. So these are the mean time to remediate something. If it takes too much time to remediate, then you're at risk of taking a lot of damage. And inside of that mean time to remediate is the mean time to detect something and the mean time to respond to something. And then all of that adds up to, okay, how long did it take for us to remediate this? How long did it take for us to fix this? So the mean time is the average time, right? So what is the average time to detect, the average time to respond, and then ultimately the average time to remediate something? Then we have the vulnerability aging. So the percentage of critical or high value vulnerabilities that have been open for 30 days or more, 60 days or more, 90 days or more. As you can imagine, when it comes, especially when it comes down to compliance and certain things like that, if you have a vulnerability that is a high severity vulnerability, it's a critical vulnerability, and it's been open for 90 days, it has not been addressed, this is a really big issue. If you're going through an audit and they find this out, this is grounds for probably some kind of legal action, some kind of fine. People can be fired as a result of this. So the age of the vulnerability is very, very important. We refer to this also as exceptions. If there is a vulnerability on your list, it's considered to be an exception on your list. And if you have exceptions on your list that are longer or older than 30 days, usually it's 30 days. It's like it shouldn't even get to 60 or 90 days. If you have vulnerabilities that are critical vulnerabilities that are open longer than 30 days, that is a really big audit flag. They will definitely deduct points from your audit. Then there's the remediation coverage. So the percentages of the vulnerabilities that were prioritized that were actually fixed within the service level agreement. So how much of those vulnerabilities have actually been remediated? That would be the percentage, that would be the coverage percentage. So, we had 100, we fixed 50 of them. So now we have 50% coverage for our remediations. The false positive rate. This is really, really important because this can affect everything else. And usually the false positive rate is very high to begin with, and then the goal is to bring the false positive rate down, right? So same thing with the vulnerability age is to bring that number down. Same thing with the mean time to remediate. We want to bring that number down. The only number so far that we want to increase is the remediation coverage. We want to cover as many of the vulnerabilities as we possibly can, but we want to bring false positives down. If you have a lot of false positives, that means the time, energy, and resources of your team is being invested just trying to figure out whether or not something is a true positive or a false positive so that they can only spend their time on the true positives. And so this can be fixed by looking at your scanner configurations. So your endpoint detection and response, your SIM tools, and everything along those lines. You want to make sure that they're configured well enough that they're actually alerting the SOC team and the security team of more true positives than false positives. But more often than not, there are just so many false positives that come through because a user could be coming back from vacation, they forgot their password, so they enter 3 wrong passwords, and now that triggers the multiple failed logins, and that ends up triggering a security alert, right? So that by itself is like, okay, well, you can't really fix that because I don't want to not be notified if somebody has continued failed logins. I do want to be notified. We just have to take it into account that, okay, some of those are going to be actual users that just forgot their password, or they left caps lock on and they're misentering their password, something along those lines. Then you have the risk reduction over time. So trend of total effective risk score decreasing, which is another one of those things that you want to improve. So you want to reduce your risks over time. So the risk that we determined earlier was, okay, what is the impact that something could have, and what is the actual asset that could be impacted, and then what's going to happen to the business if that asset is impacted. What would be the risk factor? What's the risk score of that? So you want to decrease that risk score as often as possible. You want to secure all of your critical infrastructure, you want to patch the vulnerabilities for them, and you want to, separate them from the different areas of your business that can easily be accessible, so on and so forth. You want to do whatever you possibly can to reduce risk and keep reducing it over time. It's very unlikely that you'll get to 0, but you should be aiming for 0. If you have a low score, it's a good thing. If you have low remediation coverage, you have a low positive rate, good thing. Low vulnerability aging, good thing. Low mean time, good thing. You want to have high remediation coverage. Everything else on this list should be aimed for decreasing. And then we have the stakeholder communication. So there are different audiences that you have to just learn to communicate with, okay? The most more than likely, as an entry person, if you're starting with a SOC level 1 role or a SOC level 2 role, something like that, junior analyst, if you're starting out in cybersecurity, most likely you will just need to learn how to communicate in technical terms first. But even that, you should be able to gather the most relevant and most impactful technical information. So detailed reports, it'll include the CVE IDs, the CVSS scores, the EPSS scores, the name of the asset itself, any remediation steps that should be taken or you did take, all of those things, right? What actually took place, what was the hack, etc., etc. All of those technical terms can be relayed to the technical teams, and the technical teams could be the security engineers, it could be your SOC management, it could be people in incident response, so on and so forth. The management teams will have the summaries of the dashboards that you are dealing with and the summaries of what's going on. This is different from the management team that's your immediate supervisor. They do need to know technical analysis of what you dealt with. But the management team that is managing your supervisors, they probably can just do with the summary dashboards. For example, these were our top 10 risks. This was our mean time to remediate something, and we're increasing that trend, so that's not a good thing. We need to focus on decreasing that time. These are the blockers that are preventing us from improving our metrics, so on and so forth. The executives do not need to know most of these things. The executives need to know, okay, this is what is at risk. This is what we're dealing with. These are the assets and the critical infrastructure that's at risk. If those things are hacked into or broken into, or we lose service to them, this is how it's going to affect our business. This is how it's going to impact the business. And really the big question to answer is, okay, so, this is what it's going to cost to fix all these things, but this is what it's going to cost if we do nothing, right? So that's one of the key things that they need to also be aware of, because the average cybersecurity incident costs $4.5 million across the United States. So just to address that financial element of it is like, okay, cool, no problem. I understand that you don't want to spend too much money on this, but just based on the impact of these assets that are at risk, if we don't do anything, it's going to cost us so much more if those things get hacked and destroyed than if we were to spend, $150,000 to upgrade our systems and to put certain processes in place. Then you have your auditors and you have your regulators. So there's the evidence of the process that they're most interested in, the plan of action and the plan of management, and the compliance mapping and plan of monitoring, I should say. So plan of action and plan of monitoring and compliance mapping and the evidence of your actual process. So here are our playbooks. Here's our guidelines for this. These are our incident response plans. This is what we have in place to actually protect these assets. We have these kinds of firewalls in place, endpoint detection, encryption. The server rooms are locked, and there are security guards, there are CCTV cameras. This is how it all maps to the various compliance elements that we have to abide by inside of our industry and inside of our company. So these would be the different layers of communication, the different audiences that you have to actually learn to communicate with and to cater your reports to. And, management teams typically have to learn how to communicate with technical teams, how to communicate with the people that are, they have their foot on the ground. They also have to learn how to communicate with executives, and they also have to learn how to communicate with auditors and regulators. Typically, the people that have their foot on the ground, they usually interact with each other, and then they usually interact with their immediate management and their supervisors. So it'll go in multiple directions for the most part, but in some cases it just goes in one direction. But really does not matter, because it is a skill set that you have to develop if you're planning on being in this industry for a while, and you will eventually get promoted and you'll grow into bigger roles, which means you have to learn how to communicate back and forth between different teams and audiences of people. And now we can talk about the risk scorecards, action plans, and the inhibitors. So the risk scorecards are actually a new emphasis in the 0-4 version of CySA+, and it has to do with the summary of the current risk posture. So the visual summary is a really important element of this. If you can do I don't know, some kind of a graph maybe, or if you can put everything on one page so that it all correlates to each other as much as possible. If you can avoid just line by line of bullet point after bullet point of data, if you can interconnect these things together so that people understand what it means, right? Heat maps are amazing, trend lines are amazing, our top risks, our top 5, top 10 risks, these are all very, very useful. And these often combine the scores themselves. So you have the severity score, CVSS, then you have the probability score, EPSS, and then you have the asset value. So you say it's this severe, it's this probable, and if these things actually take place against this specific asset, this is what our risk would be, and we would rank this a very high risk type of a vulnerability and an asset, etc. So you can use various visualizations or graphs, trend lines, whatever it is, to indicate what these specific scores really mean, right? And we have this many high risk assets, we have this many medium risk, this many low risk. These are the top risks that we're dealing with. These are the top trends that we're dealing with. This is what we're seeing, etc., so on and so forth. So this is a new level of measurement and a new level of communication that is being covered inside of the CS0-004 examination. And then we have the action plans. So the action plans should be, this is kind of like a pretty simple concept to understand. It needs to be specific. It needs to be assigned to a specific group or a specific person. There needs to be time-bound remediation tasks, meaning your goal is to meet this remediation within 10 minutes or within, I don't know, an hour, whatever it is, whatever would make sense to your specific environment. But these would be the specific action steps. They should be assigned to people, and there should be goals, timeline goals assigned to them. And then somebody will take ownership of them, right? So it's like when an alert comes in or when an assignment is placed, it says, okay, it goes to this group of people, and then within that group of people, somebody becomes the actual owner of that set of actions. Then they have their due date that they have to deliver it on. They have to update their status in real time, and then provide any compensating controls if they are delayed, meaning, I can't finish this by the due date that has been assigned to me. So what I will say is this is what we should do in the interim while I'm trying to finish this and while I'm trying to figure this out. And obviously, if you say you can't finish it by the deadline, you need to have a really good reason as to why you can't finish it. It can't be, well, I don't have the skills. That's not a good enough answer. They will say, okay, well, we shouldn't have hired you. So there needs to be a very specific reason as to whatever the blockages are, whatever those inhibitors are that are preventing you from accomplishing the task for the due date itself and the due time itself, and then what you would recommend to be done in the interim while you are getting that goal done. And then that brings us to our inhibitors, and which is very important in the 04 examination. So you need to document why remediation is delayed. Is it because the system is old? Is it because the production environment can't be stopped, and because it's still running, I can't interrupt production? So we need to put some kind of plan in place to block out some time to, when we're not in production, or turn off production systems or something like that. The vendor is not replying in time. They're not giving us what we need in time. We don't have enough bandwidth. We don't have enough computing power. There aren't enough people. We don't have enough money. What are the resources that you're limited on? You need to document all of that stuff. You need to be very clear about what all of those things are. And that will end up being something that will be passed on to upper management so that they can say, okay, well, we need to go ahead and upgrade these systems, or we need to figure out when production is going to be offline so that we can actually do the work that we need to. We need to contact our vendors. Who's our point person in that company that we need to contact to let them know that we need to get this done? We need more money. Who can we talk to the CFO and the CEO and the CISO and all these people to try to allocate some more money, because otherwise, we won't be able to remediate this thing. Otherwise, we're going to still be vulnerable and still be at risk. So if you can actually do this, right? If you can actually outline all of these things, then you're going to show a lot of things. In addition to transparency and maturity, you also show that you really do have your head wrapped around everything that's going on. And not only do auditors love it, but your management loves it. They notice that they can rely on you to really do detail-oriented work and that you're good at communicating what's going on. And that's all very, very important in getting you promoted and in making more money and ultimately getting bigger titles and doing all of those different things, because people who don't document, people who don't outline what is actually going on and why things are working or are not working really are not valued. You can be really tech savvy, but if you cannot communicate what's going on, then what good are you? You can do the work, sure, fine. We can rely on you to do one specific job function, but if you can't communicate, then there's really no use to promoting you, because you have to be able to communicate. This is why you see a lot of folks who are technical geniuses, but because they have certain lack of social skills, they don't get promoted and they stay within certain job roles because they can't be promoted. It's not possible to promote them, because then they would have to start communicating with people. They have to start relaying their thoughts and their ideas, and they don't have that ability to do it. Therefore, they just cap out what their promotions can be. They cap out what their responsibilities can be, because they're really, really good with computers. They're excellent at code. They're excellent at all the technical and logical aspects. They simply cannot document and communicate their documentation. So all of these things are very, very important, and just that by itself, that last bit of information, is also something that can be an inhibitor. We have somebody on our team who's excellent at doing this, but trying to get this guy to give us the reasoning why is very difficult, because he does not have the ability to communicate with us in these manners, and he gets flustered or something along those lines, and that is a resource constraint. People are your resources, people are your assets, and at the same time, people can be your liabilities as well. They could be a constraint in your resources. So it's not fun to say out loud. It's not fun to be this kind of a person, to actually say these things. However, it is a part of reality. Therefore, we should be thinking about it and we should be addressing it. Okay, moving on to analyzing trends and the compliance with service level agreements. So the trend analysis portion of this is a really key part of documentation. It's also a really key part of communication and reporting. So month-over-month changes in critical vulnerabilities, or month-over-month changes in those metrics. So think about it like this. Trends analysis is the measurement of metrics over an extended period of time. So if we're looking at the month-over-month change in critical vulnerabilities, it would be like, okay, month 1, we had 100, month 2, we had 90, month 3, we had 83, month 4, we had 75. So that's a downward trend in your critical vulnerabilities, which is a great thing. But if the critical vulnerabilities trend is pushing upward, that is not a good thing. So this trends analysis is very key in somebody in upper management to be like, oh, you know what, we need to address this. This is actually very, very important. Or we need to, congratulate these people. We need to recognize these people for the great job that they're doing. The mean time to remediate improvement. We are improving the time that it takes for us to detect, to respond, and to ultimately remediate something. That's amazing. The trend of that is going downward. The mean time to remediate is going downward. And the opposite could be also true, that it's going upward and we need to fix something. If it's going downward, we need to keep up the good work and we need to try to make it even better, right? But if it's going upward, there's something that needs to be addressed, and we need to try to figure out what those inhibitors are that is preventing us from improving those metrics. And then we have the vulnerability influx versus the remediation rate. We have 100,000 vulnerabilities that come in. It's a crazy number, I understand, but let's say we have 100,000 vulnerabilities that come in, and out of those vulnerabilities that come in, we're able to remediate 35% of them. It's like, okay, well, I don't know if that sounds good. It's like, okay, well, actually, the reason why that is because the 100,000 vulnerabilities that come in, 90% of them are actually really, really they're false positives. They're not even real positives. And so from the remaining 10%, we can actually remediate a large chunk of them, and we are only remediating the ones that are the highest priority, which leaves some of the low priority ones in the background. and it's backlogged, right? And we're dealing with the stuff that's the highest priority first, and then there are new vulnerabilities that are constantly coming in, so we are only dealing with the highest priority ones first. And so if we expand our team, then the rest of our team, the junior folks, can come in and actually deal with the lower vulnerability, the lowest criticality, the lowest severity ones. And then the common root causes. We have a lot of unpatched third-party softwares that we're using. We have a lot of legacy systems that we're using, and we need to go ahead and upgrade these things. We need to get new third-party partners that we can actually use. We need to find a new vendor. We need to find a new software that we can use so that we don't have to worry about these types of root causes, right? And that actually ends up being the perfect segue into the service level agreement and complying with that service level agreement. So you need to track the percentages of high or critical vulnerabilities that you have remediated within your service level agreement. So, if you have actually been able to remediate the most, let's say in your service level agreement, you said that we're going to remediate 75% of critical vulnerabilities within 7 days. Have you met that number? Have you met that goal? And if you have, then you are compliant according to your service level agreement. If you have not, then you are non-compliant with your service level agreement. A service level agreement could be something that you would have with your internet service provider. They tell you that you're going to have service 99.9% of the time. The uptime is going to be 99.9%, which means that there's a 0.1% chance that you will lose service, and it'll be for whatever reason, and we'll fix it. But we're promising you that you'll be up 99.9% of the time. That's a service level agreement. And so these things come in all shapes and sizes. We promise that within 30 days, we're going to take care of 90% of critical vulnerabilities. That's great. That's a really good promise rate, but can you actually maintain that? And so the security of that, the confidence in being able to deliver that result really has to do with your actual track record. And you can say, historically, this is what we've done, so we feel confident promising you that it's also what we can continue to do. If there are exceptions to that, you need to have justifications for those exceptions. So these are out of these, the 100%, we were able to take care of 90%. The 10% that we were not able to take care of were these. And then this is the reason why. These are the reasons why, because you have certain computers that are legacy systems, and we were told by your upper management team that we cannot get rid of those systems, so therefore we couldn't patch the critical vulnerabilities inside of those systems. That could be one of the justifications. Whatever it is, whatever those exceptions are, you need to go ahead and list them and say, these are all the exceptions. We know of them. We're aware of them. It's not like we don't know that they exist. But this is the reason why we were not able to remediate them and take care of them. And then to make things a little bit easier, you can provide visual trends. You can use Kibana, Power BI, you can use Excel, you can use the dashboard from Splunk, you can use a variety of different tools. Most tools, thankfully, have these dashboards that actually provide really great visuals, visual trends and maps and graphs and pie charts and all these things. So there's a lot of great tools that are already available for you. But one of the greatest things that you can do is use them so that you can actually deliver your point, right? And you say, hey, our critical vulnerabilities that we've remediated over time, we've improved that percentage, and you can see that inside of this graph. From January of 2025 to December of 2025, we were able to move and improve all of our remediations, and we have increased the percentage of vulnerabilities that we've been able to remediate within the 7 days or the 30 days that we promised you. So those dashboards and the graphs can actually be very, very handy in delivering your point as to why you are doing something and why you're not doing something, and the way that those trends are going. As a real world example here, so there's a large financial institution who will remain unnamed because we don't want to deal with, we don't want to mess with their reputation, we can say. They implemented monthly vulnerability trend reporting after a 2024 breach. Within 18 months, they reduced average critical vulnerability age from 120 days to 18 days and achieved 98% SLA compliance, which was directly tied to better executive visibility. This is an amazing result. This is excellent. Obviously, they prioritized security and they prioritized their compliance environment and regulatory compliance, all of that good stuff. This is a really great response rate. To go from 120 days to 18 days, that's 4 months, and now it's almost half a month, right? You went from 120 days to 18 days to reduce your vulnerability age, right? The critical vulnerabilities, you've addressed them within 18 days. Great response. And then you now are able to achieve 98% compliance. So if we were to look at this number right here, right, the percentage of high critical vulnerabilities that were remediated within 7 to 30 days, or let's say 30 days is their thing. So if it's within 30 days that they were supposed to remediate, they now have remediated 98% of those vulnerabilities within the first 30 days. That is an excellent metric, and it's something that is to be proud of. And that brings us to episode 11, chapter 11's practice questions. This was definitely one of the shorter episodes, probably the shorter episode by far. As usual, we're going to go through some multiple choice questions. We're going to go through some scenario-based questions. We will try to establish our critical thinking mechanisms so that we know how to think and we know how to understand exactly what the question is asking. We know exactly how to find the most obvious answers and how to get rid of all of the answers that are obviously incorrect. And all of these things will actually help you with your test taking skills. So it's all very important, and we will just review some of these key concepts. This should not be complicated because reporting and metrics are fairly easy to wrap our head around. And hopefully you'll be able to get all of the questions right. When we get to the scenario-based questions, I would very much love for you to drop your answers in the scenario to the scenario in the comment section below, and chime in on each other's comments and on each other's answers. Be nice, be respectful, no name calling, no disrespect or anything like that. But if you can add to an idea and expand on an idea, or just share what you would do instead, all of that is very welcomed, and I will definitely be chiming in on the comments as well. First question is, which metric is most useful for demonstrating vulnerability management improvement over time? So vulnerability management improvement is what we're trying to look at here, and the most useful metric. So total number of vulnerabilities found per scan, mean time to remediate, number of scanners deployed, total disk space used by logs. So disk space used by logs is irrelevant. That's definitely not the answer. The number of scanners that are deployed is also not really the answer, because we're looking at a metric that has to do with vulnerability management improvement. So the number of scanners doesn't really help us there. The total number of vulnerabilities that are found per scan also is kind of a useless metric, right? We already established that that's pretty much a useless metric, the number of vulnerabilities. So the mean time to remediate the vulnerability is probably the best metric that we can look at. There we go. Risk scorecards are primarily intended for executive and board level communication, daily technical team use, regulatory auditors only, patch management automation. So anytime I see the word only, I've mentioned this before, anytime I see the word only, I always tread softly, and it's kind of a red flag for me. So I don't think it would be for regulatory auditors only. I may be incorrect, but I don't think that would be the answer. The daily technical team use. So if we can try to recall what goes on the risk scorecard, right? It's like the percentage of things, the number of things that are at risk, the assets themselves, the CVSS score, the EPSS score, all of those things. So that can be something that would be the daily technical team, but it's really not, because they are looking at much more detail-oriented reports. So executive and board level communication, I think that's pretty solid, because we're looking at, this is the probability that this asset can be exploited, and if it happens, this is what we're dealing with. So that's the score of that risk. So I feel pretty confident about that. I definitely don't think it's C or D. But in my mind, I think it's A. Let's see, that is A. Okay, great. Documenting inhibitors to remediation demonstrates transparency and maturity in the vulnerability management process. I'm going to say yes to that. Weakness in the security team, no. That patching is unnecessary and a failure to prioritize. So patching is definitely never unnecessary. Patching is always necessary. So that's an obvious incorrect answer. A failure to prioritize is actually also not the answer, because we're actually documenting our inhibitors through remediation. So we have an understanding of what we need to prioritize. The weakness in the security team is technically what we are documenting, actually. So we are saying that, hey, listen, we have these weaknesses in our remediation process, but we're not trying to do it maliciously. We're not trying to say, our team sucks kind of a thing. What we're trying to do is we're trying to be transparent and show maturity that we are on top of things. So we say that, based on everything that we need to do, these are the reasons why we cannot do them to the best of our abilities. So it would be A. Very good. Okay, which compliance framework requires quarterly external vulnerability scans and remediation of high findings? So that was this key right here, the quarterly external one. That's something that has been kind of like drilled into my brain, and that is the PCI, the Payment Card Industry Standard. I don't know if you're going to be asked these kinds of questions, because it would require that you know a lot of compliance and regulation. So what I will say is, it would be a good idea for you to become familiar with the most common regulations, the most common compliance frameworks, and know what they stand for and what they're good for. So the NIST cybersecurity framework is a great framework. It has to do with the general cybersecurity functionality and what you should be trying to accomplish with your general cybersecurity posture. GDPR has to do with data for California residents specifically. So it was developed by California for California residents to protect California residents and their data. But this is the reason why any website that you visit will have a pop-up at the bottom, and it says, accept cookies or decline all cookies except the mandatory ones. You know what I mean? And this is now applied to every single website across the world, because you never know when somebody from California is going to visit your website. So now this is a mandatory regulation that every website has to abide by, which is why whenever you visit websites, you will see that there's that pop-up that says, hey, do you accept our cookies? Are we allowed to use these cookies? Or are you declining everything except the mandatory ones that are required for this website to function? Something like that. And then there's ISO 27001, which I believe has to do with documentation or communication. I have not memorized. So I know that PCI DSS requires the quarterly external vulnerability scans. I know that much. Very good. Okay. The best audience for a detailed CVE by CVE remediation report is the technical audience, the technical remediation team. C-level folks don't need all the detailed stuff. External auditors also don't need all the detailed stuff. Customers definitely don't need all the detailed stuff. It's the technical remediation teams. SLA compliance tracking is most important for proving that all vulnerabilities are ignored. Absolutely incorrect. Definitely wrong. Demonstrating that prioritized risks are being addressed within agreed timeframes. Excellent. Increasing scan frequency. Not necessarily. Reducing logging requirements. Also wrong answer. You definitely don't want to reduce logging requirements to maintain compliance with SLAs. You don't necessarily want to increase your scanning frequency. It doesn't mean that you're going to do your job better, although whatever it takes to do your job better is something that you can do. So the SLA compliance is to demonstrate that the risks that are prioritized are actually being addressed within the time frames that you are promising them. In 2025, after the Citrix bleed exploitation wave, organizations with strong risk scorecards were better able to hide the issue from regulators, avoid all liability, automatically patch systems, show transparency, and justify delays to customers and auditors. So we didn't review this. This was actually one of the case studies that I glimpsed over, skimmed over, something like that. But let's actually just review it, since it's one of the questions. I didn't realize that it would be one of the questions, and since it is, we will actually go ahead and review it. So this is it right here. So Citrix bleed, the CVE ID is here. So this is from 2023. There was an exploitation wave that took place, meaning that there were a lot of systems and companies that were being exploited. So organizations had to produce risk scorecards. And the ones who did produce risk scorecards showing unpatched Citrix instances, documented inhibitors combined together, right? So all the vendor patch delay and all that stuff, they were able to negotiate better with regulators and customers. The ones who said we're working on it faced harsher scrutiny. So when you actually show that, okay, these are all the instances that have been unpatched, these are all of the inhibitors that we've documented that are holding us back from patching them and from doing what we need to do, for example, vendor patch delays, they were able to negotiate better with their regulators and their customers because they're being super transparent, right? This is why these things are actually so important. They're being super transparent and they're telling both their regulators and their customers exactly what's going on. And obviously, those were met with better responses from their regulators and their customers than the folks who just said, yeah, we're working on it. Don't worry about it. We're working on it. And people are now left in the dark and they're like, well, what are you doing to work on it? And especially regulators, they're like, you can't just say what we're working on it. Maybe customers might be like, okay, fine, at least they're working on it and they're aware that there's a problem, but regulators want much more information. So this is the Citrix bleed exploitation wave. Now that we know this, let's go ahead and look at the question one more time. So after the Citrix bleed exploitation wave, organizations with strong risk scorecards were better able to show transparency and justify delays to customers and their auditors. There you go. A good vulnerability trend report should show only new vulnerabilities, change in risk posture over time, number of emails sent, total scan runtime. I don't know what the hell the email sent has to do with anything, so that's kind of irrelevant, garbage answer. Only new vulnerabilities is also, it's kind of useless. We need to know what is going on with the trend, right? So if there are new vulnerabilities, it doesn't really show us the trend. The total scan runtime is also not a trend. You're just telling us what the total runtime for all of your scans were. It's not a trend. So the change in risk posture over time, that's a trend right there. Over time, what is this data looking like? And so the age of it, the mean time to remediate, and the coverage of all of them, this is the risk posture. And so over time, the change of it, whether it's going up or down, that's what a trend report should show. When communicating to executives, vulnerability reports should focus on business impact, risk reduction, and resource needs, technical CVE details, full Nmap output, every false positive found. I mean, D is absolutely incorrect because that's probably hundreds of thousands of false positives, and these guys do not have the time to, or the skill set to review all that stuff. The full Nmap output is also completely foreign to these people. They have no idea what that even means. They don't know how to read an Nmap output. The technical CVE details is also irrelevant to them because they don't need technical information. They need to know how it impacts the business, how we can reduce the risk, and the resources that are needed to do that, and then answering that final question, what would happen if we didn't take care of these risks? Excellent. Okay. The plan of action and plan of monitoring tracking is most commonly required under which framework? So not PCI DSS, that's payment card stuff. OWASP top 10 has to do with web application security protocols and the most recent versions of them. This list gets it gets updated every 3 years or so. CIS controls also not what it is. It is definitely, I think, FedRAMP NIST 853 from what I remember based on our notes. Yeah, very good. So plan of action and plan of monitoring tracking is most commonly required under FedRAMP and NIST 853. Okay, so here's the first scenario. I would love to get your response. After I read the question, I would like for you to pause the video, drop your answer, and then replay the video so that you will see what my response to it will be so that my response doesn't affect your answer. And then, of course, everybody comment on each other's comments. I'll definitely chime in on those comments as well. And let's keep it respectful, fun, and conducive to a strong learning environment. So, scenario is your monthly vulnerability report shows 42 critical vulnerabilities open greater than 90 days. The mean time to remediate is 75 days, and the service level agreement says that we're supposed to meet it in 30 days. So list 3 key pieces of information that you would include in the executive summary. Name 2 inhibitors you might document to explain the delay. So the 3 key pieces of information is that we're getting, a high number of critical vulnerabilities, and maybe a big chunk of them are false positives. That could be a key piece of information. The reason why it's greater than 90 days is because we don't have enough of a staff, or we don't have enough resources, manpower, something like that, to meet it in less time than that. Because we can actually also see that our mean time to remediate something is 75 days. Inside of this, we can see that our mean time to detect something is a week, right? And then the mean time to respond to something or reply to something, all of that is, let's say, another week or something like that. And then now, by the time that gets to the team that is going to do the remediation, we've already had 2 weeks passed. You know what I mean? So if we can decrease those times, then we can definitely improve. And then we just need more people, right? We might need more people on hand as to, and then that would kind of serve as the reason why we are not able to meet it within those 30 days. So the 2 inhibitors that we might document could be that, we don't have the best software to detect it, therefore we're detecting it late. Another one could be that we don't have enough of a team, so our team is dealing with a bunch of things that they can't remediate in time. Another one could be that the critical vulnerabilities that are coming in, 50% of them are false positives, and we're just spending a long time just trying to figure out what a true positive is and what the false positives are. These are all a bunch of different things that you can consider when it comes down to the responses. The next scenario, you are preparing a quarterly compliance report for PCI DSS. What are the minimum vulnerability scanning requirements that you must prove? What metric would you highlight to show program maturity? So this is a really good question, and let's see if we can find what the reporting requirements are for PCI DSS. So let's see what Gemini will tell us. Okay, the big 3 technical reports. These are mandatory technical outputs required every 90 days. So the ASV external scan must be performed by an approved scanning vendor. So you have the attestation of scan compliance, and you must have a pass result. If you fail, you must remediate and rescan until you pass within that same quarter. The internal vulnerability scan, which is a risk-based approach, best practice is to include not just the high and critical findings, but a trend analysis showing if the total number of vulnerabilities is decreasing over time. The wireless access point is another one. Maintain an inventory of authorized versus unauthorized or rogue devices. Even if you don't use wireless, you must produce a report proving you scanned the environment and found no rogue access points. This is very interesting. These are the mandatory technical outputs that are required every 90 days by PCI DSS. This is actually very, very interesting. Under PCI DSS v40, the quarterly reporting is no longer just a box ticking exercise. It's the foundation of a continuous compliance model. So very, very interesting. We have the best practices for content and structure. So use a remediation tracker. For every vulnerability, especially those with a CVSS that is higher than 4, your report should include a table showing the discovery date, targeted resolution date, remediation action, and validation, which is the date that the successful rescan that closed that ticket. Then you have the executive summary, so the management overview of this. It requires and it mandates that service providers have executive management review the compliance program quarterly. So KPIs to include would be the mean time to remediate, percentage of systems patched on time, and any significant changes to the network that occurred this quarter. Resource gaps, use this report to highlight if you need more budget or headcount to maintain the security controls. And then we have the documenting of the significant changes. So all the best practices, that would be a section in the quarterly report that lists all the significant changes and links them to the out-of-cycle scans that have been performed. This proves to the auditor that you didn't just wait for the end of the quarter to check the security. Then we have reporting requirements for service providers. If you're a service provider rather than just a merchant, your reporting burden is higher under this requirement. You must document quarterly review confirming that personnel are following security policies and operational procedures. Logs are being reviewed daily. Security alerts are being responded to. All quarterly scans, like ASV and internal, were completed. Don't just sign off on these. Keep meeting minutes or a signed attestation from the department heads as evidence for your annual audit. So meeting minutes is, on this day, all these people met at this location. These are the topics that we talked about these are the topics for the agenda. When we discussed this topic, this is what we found out. When we discussed this topic, this is what we found out. So meeting minutes are actually really great for these types of reports. Then there's the archiving of evidence. So one of the big pitfalls is losing the evidence before the annual audit. So retention, keep at least the last 4 quarters of reports, meaning the last year. Have full scans, never just keep the executive summary of the scan. Keep the technical report as well. Quality assurance often wants to see the specific ports and services that were active during the scan. False positive documentation. If you disputed a finding in the ASV scan, keep the evidence of the dispute and the vendor's approval of that dispute. So this is just kind of like a summary checklist. Does the ASV scan have a pass status? Are all the vulnerabilities from a 4.0 CVSS accounted for? So 4.0 or higher severity, are they accounted for? Did we perform a wireless rogue access point scan? Did we document any significant changes? And for service providers, did management sign off on the quarterly review? Really, really great series of checklists. And that's what's required for PCI, right? So let's go back to our question here. So it says, what are the minimum vulnerability scanning requirements that you must prove? We just discussed all of them. We need to look at the rogue access point. We need to look at the actual vulnerabilities that we have and have them passed. And if there's anything higher than a v4.0, it needs to be documented, etc., etc. These are like the vulnerability scanning the minimum vulnerability scanning requirements are these things right here, right? These are the bare minimum. This is the recommendation that Jim and I made to one of our videos on this channel. These are the minimum. The external scan approved by a scanning vendor, you need to have pass. Internal scan to find any trend analysis of the vulnerabilities decreasing over time, and the wireless access point. So looking at the external scan to get a pass result, internal scan to look at our vulnerabilities and the trend analysis, and a wireless access point to see if there are any rogue access points. So that is that. What metric would you highlight to show program maturity? That would be the trend analysis, that we are hopefully moving in a downward trend in our vulnerabilities, and of course the time that it took for us to address those vulnerabilities, and an upward trend in the metric that we have been meeting our SLA requirements, that we've actually been taking care of critical vulnerabilities in the designated time, and we've been doing them at a 98% rate or something like that. And that's it. With that, we're officially done with Chapter 11, Episode 11's practice questions, and now we just got one more to go. These are the key downloads for this episode. We have the Executive Risk Scorecard template, Remediation Action Plan template, Vulnerability KPI Dashboard template, and everything else. So the book that I'm using for the lecture, as well as the slideshow for the practice questions that has hundreds upon hundreds of slides in it, and the Python scripts that we developed for this course, as well as all the other Python scripts that I've developed over the last couple of years for our members, as well as all of the other course contents like Network Plus, Pentest Plus, Linux Plus, Security Plus. All of that stuff is available to our Hackaholics Anonymous members who are agent level members or above. So agent, guardian, and masters get all of those downloads and then some, and of course everything else that comes out into the future as well. So if you have not done so already, make sure that you stick around for the next couple of minutes just so you can learn how you can join Hackaholics Anonymous. And apart from that, we are officially done with Chapter 11, and we just have one more left to go, which is Chapter 12, Incident Reporting and Communication. If you found value in this video, and if you'd like to get more videos like this one, then make sure that you like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. And if you have any questions, or if you want to drop feedback or the answers to the scenario questions, drop a comment in the comments section below. There are a lot of videos coming out apart from the videos for CYSA, which we're pretty much done with. But there's the CompTIA Pentest Plus labs that are still coming out. There's the offensive pen testing stuff, AI for cybersecurity, and there's SOC Level 1 for 2026. So all of those updated courses are also coming out as well. And there's just going to be a bunch of other stuff, different kinds of posts and different kinds of things that I share. So definitely, if you have not done so already, make sure that you subscribe, like the video, drop a comment, and turn on the notification bell so you actually get the notification when a new video does come out. And of course, if you're interested in advancing your education and getting all the extra perks, make sure that you check out Hackaholics Anonymous. To get access to the CYSA Plus book, the practice questions, the exclusive episode downloads, and to get access to the CompTIA Linux Plus, Network Plus, Pentest Plus, and Security Plus course contents, and to get access to me via Discord plus all the future perks and content rollouts, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. We have 4 tiers: the Supporter, Agent, Guardian, and Master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The Agent, Guardian, and Master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below. It's the link that says Join Hackaholics Anonymous. I look forward to seeing you in the Discord chats. If not, I look forward to seeing you in the comment section. Until then, happy hacking and stay out of trouble. It's your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers, your favorite network and system attacker / protector. If no one else loves you, Hank loves you. Love, peace, and chicken grease, and I will see you in the next episode later. In episode 12 of the CompTIA CySA training series, we're going to wrap up the CompTIA CySA course by finalizing and talking about incident reporting and communication. My name is Hank Hackerson, your trainer for today, and to get more videos like this one for future courses, make sure that you like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. We made it. We are officially here. Congratulations for making it to the end. It has been a journey. It's been a long ride, I would say, and I'm very proud of you for making it this far, and I think you should be proud of yourself too. Especially if you saw every single other episode that we've done, and you've done the practice questions, and you went to try Hack Me, and you did all of the labs and all of that good stuff as well. I'm very, very proud of you, and I think you are setting yourself up for success, and you deserve to actually achieve success and actually have success inside of cybersecurity, no matter what route you're trying to actually pursue and what it is that you're trying to do. And to wrap it all up, we're going to be talking about incident reporting and communication, because this is a very, very important topic as it all comes together. We've talked about a lot of things. We've talked about building secure operations, spotting threats, managing vulnerabilities, detecting and responding to the incidents, all the way through to turning those experiences into clear, powerful communication that drives decisions and improves security posture. This has been our entire journey from episode 0 all the way to now. So in domain 4, being where we are right now, the last episode, since it's all about translating technical reality into language that stakeholders can understand, we're going to be talking about the incident reporting element itself, the most urgent and higher stakes version of the same skill set that we talked about in vulnerability reporting, which was our last episode, our last chapter. So chapter 11 was vulnerability reporting. Today we're going to be talking about incident reporting, which inside of the incident there will probably be multiple vulnerabilities, and there will be probably exploitations and a bunch of other things that we really have to address. The 0.4 version of CYSA Plus places significant emphasis on executive level communication during and after incidents, structured shift handovers, especially in a 24/7 security operations center, which is very much the case in a lot of security operations centers, because if you're working for a government or if you're working for a Fortune 500 company, it's very rare that there will only be a 9 to 5 shift. There will most likely be a 24/7 shift, and so there needs to be a process in place for those shifts to hand over their current events to each other, right? So this is what happened while I was here. This is what we're dealing with right now. So I want to let you know the last step that I took so that you know what next step to take, right? The key incident metrics, different from vulnerability metrics. These are very, very important. The vulnerability metrics had things to do with like the mean time to remediate something. But in this particular case, we're going to be talking about more in depth, like the mean time to detect, as well as what it takes to remediate. So it's like all the steps to remediation. Then the clear documentation of declaration, escalation, root cause, and the lessons learned, because this is all a part of the incident at large, and everything falls inside of the incident, including the vulnerability itself. So this is where you would go from being an analyst to being seen as a strategic security professional, and that's the step that you would need to accomplish. That's where you would need to get if you want to grow and become a senior level engineer or somebody that actually gets into the chief information security position inside of any company. And maybe even if you want to start your own security company yourself. To get access to the CYSA Plus book, the practice questions, the exclusive episode downloads, and to get access to the CompTIA Linux Plus, Network Plus, Pentest Plus, and Security Plus course contents, and to get access to me via Discord plus all the future perks and content rollouts, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, agent, guardian, and master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below. It's the link that says Join Hackaholics Anonymous. I look forward to seeing you in the Discord chats. If not, I look forward to seeing you in the comment section. Until then, happy hacking and stay out of trouble. So as a recap of our last episode for Chapter 11, Episode 11, we talked about vulnerability reporting, and that focuses on the ongoing risk posture, the trends, the mean time to remediate the vulnerability, the service level agreement compliance, and any inhibitors that would hold us from actually meeting our service level agreements or promises, the mean time to remediate goals, the trends, and everything else. What would be holding us back? Those are what the inhibitors themselves would be. And then the audiences that actually vary. And this is going to probably remain very consistent with incident reporting as well. So, for tech teams, you would need to have detailed reports. And for executive teams, you would have summaries and business-focused reports that will help them understand the big picture and the costs of taking action or not taking action. And then we talked about the various formats of those reports, for example, scorecards, action plans, and compliance evidence. And again, those things have to do with, the scorecards would be more for executives, action plans would be more for the technical teams, compliance would be for auditors, and so on. So incident reporting is different in the fact that it's event-driven, it's time-sensitive, and it has higher visibility. So this actually has to do with an incident that is taking place right now, and we have to report on it while we're being hacked, kind of a thing. A vulnerability report is that, hey, we found these vulnerabilities. It's not necessarily that somebody is hacking the vulnerabilities, but we just found them and we need to address them. The incident report is that it's actually happening. We're in the middle of the incident. And then there's also the post-incident report as well. So there needs to be a balance between transparency with the actual legal and regulatory considerations as well. So we need to be transparent, but we need to also adhere to legal and regulatory considerations. And it often involves multiple stakeholders simultaneously working together. For example, the legal team, the PR team, all the C-suite executives, regulators, and then the technical team. And then there's the security analyst team, there's the security engineering team, there is the incident response team, there is the digital forensics team, so on and so forth. So there are a lot of different moving parts taking place or moving together and having to work together in a coordinated effort to take care of the incident. All right, under incident reporting, we have 3 subtitles. So the first one is the declaration, escalation, root cause, and lessons learned. So this all falls under incident reporting. And then we have 2 other subtitles as well, which will all fall under incident reporting. So under declaration, the formal acknowledgement that an incident has occurred and is being treated as such. So we are declaring, we know that there's something going on, and we're treating it seriously. We're taking it seriously. This is usually documented in an incident ticket or a case management kind of a system where we say, hey, listen, this is what's going on. This is the actual ticket to open up this incident. We are now working on this ticket, or we're working on this case. And it triggers the escalation matrix, meaning that, based on this incident and based on what has been outlined to us in our updated playbooks and all of those things, I know that I need to escalate this incident to X, Y, and Z people and these teams, and I need to contact these people, so on and so forth. Legal hold on evidence. This also is something that is triggered. There is a hold on the evidence, meaning control the evidence, hold the evidence, try as much as possible to preserve the evidence. And then, of course, the notification procedures. Who do you contact? What does the call tree look like? In what order do you contact these people? And so on. So the declaration typically starts with creating a ticket, saying that I'm aware that this is going on, or we are aware that this is going on. And then in accordance to this incident of what we see inside of our incident response manual and the playbook and all of that stuff, this is what we're going to do to escalate it. These are the ways that we're going to treat whatever evidence we find, and these are the people that we're going to notify. Then we have the actual escalation itself. So we've declared it, we've created the ticket, and now we're going to begin escalation. So this brings in the right people at the right time. We talked about this in chapter 9 as well, or episode 9, I should say. And it documents who was notified, when they were notified, and why they were notified. Because different people have different specialties, and depending on the incident, we need to notify the right teams. And then there's going to be a group of people who will always be notified. For example, management and the people who manage all of the teams, and then ultimately the CISO and things like that. So there are a group of people that will always be notified, and then there will be individual groups of people that will be notified depending on the type of the incident and what's going on. Then there is the root cause communication, right? So we need to actually report on the reason that this has occurred. And sometimes you don't know this right away. Sometimes it takes some investigating to figure this out. But the technical element of it, for example, there was this vulnerability that was not patched. We were even aware of the vulnerability maybe, and we didn't patch it because of some priority or whatever. And that's the technical root cause. The process root cause could be that, too many people had too much access to too many things. So the people that should not have had access to certain critical systems or sensitive information had access to them, and those people got hacked. Therefore, the information is now exploited, or it's being stolen, or it's encrypted, something like that. And then, of course, there's the human element of it, which has everything to do with, you could have all of these things right. All of these things could be great, but then one stupid human being clicks on a link inside of an email, and the entire system topples down on top of itself. So that is the human element. The uneducated human element is the sand upon which we build our security castles. And we always need to be aware of those people. Those people exist, especially new hires that have nothing, they don't know anything, they're still picking their nose, these snot-nosed little green people that have no idea what the hell they're doing, and they come into our company and they start using the company email to sign up for a bunch of newsletters and all of that, which opens up all of these attack vectors, and it opens them up for being victims of phishing, and then ruins the company, right? So all of this is often determined during post-incident analysis. So a lot of these things are not done during the declaration, escalation, and actually investigation and handling of the incident. They are typically done after we have handled the incident and we're now in the continuous monitoring phase. So we've eradicated and we're now continually monitoring to make sure that it doesn't veer its head. And then while we're continually monitoring, we're now going to start investigating as to what the root cause was. And then when all of this is done, and now we actually know the root cause and all those things, we will then have the tabletop exercise, the lessons learned meeting, which goes ahead, and everybody who was involved in that incident, and maybe all of their teammates and people who are new that are going to be working in those departments, everybody's included in this. And we're going to have this giant meeting, and we're going to say, okay, What did we learn? How do we update our playbooks? What are the new detection rules that we need to put into our systems and our security tools? What are the new trainings that we need to provide to these humans that are clicking on these phishing links? What are the new policies that we need to implement? And how do we move forward from here? What are the actionable improvements that we have to take so that this does not happen again? And there's a chance that we will get attacked again, most likely, but at the very least, if we can avoid this same exact incident from taking place, then we've won. We've actually made improvements, and that is a good result from an incident, right? So it's always important to update your environment and your playbooks and rules and all of those things so that the same incidents don't occur. All right, under the reporting, we are now going to talk about the summaries that go to the executives as well as the communication plans. So the executive summary is just a 1 to 2 page high level highlight kind of that is provided to the leadership so that they know what's going on and what happened and how we're going to move forward, etc. So the key elements would be the overview of the incident. You know, we got hacked on this day. This was the damage that was done. The impact on the business, right? So we got held at ransom, right? Or we lost markers with our clients, or somebody delivered some kind of a private information to the public, and now people are aware of this stupid mistake that we made. Or there was some kind of operational crash, we lost our systems, and we needed to get the systems back online. One of the systems didn't have a backup server, so we've lost that system. We need to rebuild that system, whatever the impact was on the actual business itself. What is the current status? You know, it's been contained. It's been eradicated. So not only did we contain it, we've actually gotten rid of it. Not only have we gotten rid of it, we've actually recovered and we are now running business as usual. So that's the current status. And this means that, you know, first you're going to let them know, hey, this happened, but we've contained it. Okay, now we've eradicated. Now we've recovered all of our systems. And then this is the next steps that we would give and the risks that are remaining, that whether or not this could happen again, or if we don't patch this, or if we don't put enough people in place, or whatever, these are the next steps that we recommend that the company takes. And you just let them know what it would cost, what it would take for those next steps, and then what it would cost if those next steps were not taken. Right? And I guess that could be under recommendation. So that would be probably the thing. So it's like the next steps would be, you know, we've contained it, now we need to eradicate it. We've eradicated, now we need to recover all of our systems, right? And then during these phases, this is what's still remaining at large. And then finally, the recommendations would be, yeah, this is what we should do. This is what's going to happen if we don't do these things. These are immediate actions we can take, and these are overall strategic actions that we can take. So these guys, the executives, they don't need all the details of the type of vulnerability and, you know, whatever was going on inside of the technical elements of it. The technical reports are given to the technical people. The executives need to know what happened, when did it happen, why did it happen, how bad was it, what's the impact on the business, what's going on, how are we going to move forward from here, what's the current status, do we still need to worry about this, etc., etc. Those are the things that those guys are, or those guys and gals, those people are more worried about. They're not worried about all the technical stuff because they need to make high-level decisions. The communication plan is the breakdown of, okay, who needs to know the technical stuff, who needs to know the high-level stuff, etc., right? So who needs to know what, when, and how? So internal. The employees need to know something, and the affected departments need to something. The external would be our customers, our business partners and vendors, regulators, law enforcement, the media and public relations, pre-approved statements that have been written by the public relations team and the media team so that we can actually break this news to the world at large. It's always better to break the news before somebody finds out and tattles on you, they tell on you, you know what I mean? So internal communication plan, who internally, right? Which employees and which departments need to know what's up? Externally, who needs to know what's up, right? Is it bad enough that we even need to tell people, right? That's kind of a big thing. Does it affect our customers? Do we need to tell them? Does it affect our partners? Do we need to tell them, etc., etc.? So there are a lot of different reasons why it's been broken down this way. And honestly, there's a lot of different reasons why these things are approached in segments, because not everybody needs to know everything. And when you do finally announce to your customers that you have made upgrades to your systems, it could be in this beautiful media advertisement that goes out that says, hey, listen, this is what happened to us, but we don't want you to worry because we have now updated everything and we're stronger and even better than we were before. Nothing is affected to you. You didn't even know that it was going on. None of your information is at risk. None of that stuff. We just took some hits, and as a result, we became better, right? That's like a really good marketing approach, right? So that is the communication plan. Now, specifically, as far as regulators are concerned, in 2025, the SEC requires disclosure of material incidents within 4 business days. Material being what? Is there a financial impact? Is there an operational impact? Were customers affected? These are material, right? These are really practical, applicable things that actually affect people, right? So if that's the case, you need to disclose that within 4 business days of the incident taking place. And many states have a lot of similar rules, so this is kind of like a blanket rule that applies to everybody that is inside of the United States. The Security Exchange Commission requires these kinds of communications, right? And then we have the reports that need to be passed off when shifts are being changed and there are internal threats. And so shift handovers are very, very important in a 24/7 environment. A hospital deals with stuff like this. You know, they have nurses and there's a shift change with nurses. So the nurses give reports on the current patients that are in that floor, on that ward, and who they're dealing with, the kind of medicine they're on, the kind of medicine that has already been administered, what the next step in the plan is, what their next step in the I'm kind of drawing a blank here, but the care plan that the patient has to go through, what those steps would be that need to happen next, etc. And then it just gets passed on and gets updated with each shift. So same thing applies here. We have the structured format of there's a current status, there's active incidents, pending actions, key indicators of compromise. All of these things are included as to what's going on, right? There's a current incident that we're actually dealing with. I have to leave, but this is the stuff that we have done so far, and these are the next things that we have to do. And then these are the key indicators that we're looking at to prevent this from escalating and becoming even worse. You can use templates and tools. The Hive is a really, really big name when it comes down to creating joint cases that everybody's aware of. Jira and ServiceNow, these are ticketing systems that are used regularly. So as we mentioned earlier, we are going to be opening tickets for these types of incidents, and so people need to be using these tickets to manage the next steps and to figure out what has happened so far. And it should include the risk level that we're at, the next steps that we need to take, and any escalations that are currently in progress and what would happen as a result of those escalations. So these are the key piece of information that would be handed off, and these are kind of like blanket piece of information that would be handed off depending on the company that you're in, the industry, etc., depending on your role. A lot of these things can be updated and there could be more detailed information that would be included, but this is just the basics. This is the basic foundations of what should be included in those shift handover reports. And then we have the internal threat reports. These are briefings for the security team and the threat intelligence group. So summarizing the new tactics, techniques, and procedures, IOC's indicators of compromise, and everything else, right? Summarizing all of the threats that we are currently dealing with and the new threats that are emerging that we are worried about. And then feed this back into your threat intelligence sharing group. So MISP is another one of these places, or OpenCTI. These are actual locations where you can find threat intelligence, and they're open source communications where people go and drop these threat intelligence that they've gathered so that everybody else is aware of what's going on as well. So this is very, very handy, and it's one of those things that we should be keeping track of, especially if we're working somewhere and our job is to keep track of the new emerging threats that are coming up. We should be referring to MISP and OpenCTI and all these different locations regularly, daily, because we need to be aware of what's going on in the world of security so that we can get ahead of things if we can. And of course, we've already talked about the MGM Resorts ransomware, I think at least once in every single one of the last 5 episodes. So we've talked about this so much because it's such a big name and it was so recent and the impact was so great. There were just so many reasons. And from most different perspectives, we looked at this specific attack, and from every perspective in the last 5 major topics that we've talked about, the MGM Resort attack was relevant. So one of the elements that's relevant to what we're talking about now is the shift handover. So the poor shift handovers contributed to attackers maintaining persistence across multiple shifts, and it spanned across multiple days. It was several days before the encryption started happening for the ransomware, where these attackers were actually moving laterally. So the incident report highlighted lack of standardized handover templates, and it led to mandatory structured handovers and SOC process overhaul. So as you can imagine, just based on everything that we've talked about this specific attack over the last 5 episodes or so, there has been so many process overhauls for the MGM Resorts because the implications were so great and there were so much damage and so many things that were done incorrectly that obviously they needed to overhaul a lot of their security posture. Okay, now we get to talk about these metrics. So there are a lot of different metrics that we can talk about. These are the ones that have stood out and are most relevant to the CS0-004 examination. So the mean time to close, phishing rates, alert volumes, and everything else that you see over here. So incident-specific metrics, these are different from vulnerability metrics. So these have to do with incidents. So the mean time to close, mean time to contain, and mean time to identify. I should actually start from this one. So the mean time to identify is how quickly did we identify what's going on? How quickly did we detect it? Mean time to contain is how quickly did we contain it from spreading. It's critical for reducing the blast radius. So if it goes from 1 machine to 5 machines to 25 machines, that blast radius is now getting exponentially bigger, and then next thing we know is going to be 125 machines. You know what I mean? So it's it grows very, very quickly. So we need to contain it as fast as we can. And also these feed directly into each other. So identify feeds directly into containing, and then containing feeds directly into closing. So from the declaration of the incident to the resolution and closing of that ticket, how much time did that take, right? So these are all very, very important metrics. Obviously, if you can already guess, you want these things to be as low as possible. You want the identification time to be as low as possible, the containment time, the close time. You want all of these numbers to be trending downwards, okay? Then there's the phishing click rate, right? The percentage of users who actually click simulated or real phishing emails. This is something that happens regularly in our company, the company that I work for right now. We get regular phishing emails that are just trying to test whether or not we'll click on something. And of course, after a while, you're like, well, why is Amazon emailing me? I never subscribe to Amazon from my work email. These are the kinds of things where I'm like, well, this is clearly a phishing simulation. I'm definitely reporting this as phishing. And then as soon as I report it, they're like, congratulations, you noticed, da 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 da. And so this is something that you want to constantly be keeping people on their toes, because the weakest link in the security chain is the human being. The alert volume and false positive rate are also directly correlated, and they measure your SOC efficiency and your tool configuration efficiency. So if you have a lot of alerts coming in, that means that it's a very active environment. But those alerts are also being marked as, okay, something's wrong, right? So if those alerts are coming in as something being wrong, and a high percentage of them are false positives, meaning that there's actually nothing wrong. It was just a configuration issue, and now we're just getting a bunch of alerts coming in. So these false positive rates waste a lot of time, they waste a lot of energy. The false positive rate directly feeds into the mean time to identify. So if it takes a long time for us to go through all these false positives to actually find the true positives and identify the true positives, that's going to mess with our overall ratio, which is going to mess with our overall containment time and overall closure time. And all of these things can be done by fixing the configurations and the rules of our tools that set off these alerts. And then it's the incident closure rate. So the percentage of our incidents that we've actually resolved that should be adhering to the promises that were made inside of the service level agreement, right? We promised that we're going to take care of 80% of all critical vulnerabilities or 80% of all incidents within a certain amount of time. And so are we actually doing that? Are we closing all of these incidents within the time that we promised in the service level agreement? And if not, we need to do whatever we can to fix them. And it could be from fixing the configurations and the tools. It could be from training people so they don't click on things. It could be from identifying things faster, and that also has to do with the tools themselves. And then the level of containment now has to do with the human skill, the people who are actually managing the incident response. And then same thing for the mean time to close. And all of that feeds into the incident closure rate. So we need to pay attention to the trends of these data points because these are very important metrics. And we need to show whether or not we're making progress or we are regressing, we're losing progress. All of these things are very, very important. So obviously you want to be making progress. The progress of these things is measured differently. These top three, progress means that they're going downward. This also means that progress is going downward. Alert volume means that we should be having less false positives. Incident closure rate means that we have more resolved incidents. So basically all of these are trending downward. We want them to be trending downward. This last one should be trending upwards. So the real world story here. After 2024, there was a Change Healthcare ransomware attack that happened in 2024. After that attack, organizations that tracked their mean time to close right here and phishing click rates were able to prove to regulators that they had proactive programs in place and that reduced fines and scrutiny from these regulators. So this is very important because these things, declaring these things is not just for shits and giggles, excuse my French. These things are to reduce fines. It's to reduce scrutiny. If regulators are constantly on your butt about these things, then you're going to now have this nuisance, this little watchful eye that is constantly trying to micromanage you. And that just by itself can be extremely stressful. So there are a lot of things that happen currently as it's going on. And as long as companies abide by certain foundational principles, the headaches are less, the loss of money is less, things are working smoother, the company's making more money. There are so many benefits to adhering to security regulations and reporting and metrics and all of that good stuff. All right, so here is a mock executive brief. This is what we would deliver to our team of executives. And this is about a ransomware incident that happened in October of 2025. So here's the first paragraph, right? The overview of the incident. On October 15, 2025 at 8:45, EDR, our endpoint detection response, detected ransomware encryption activity on 14 production servers. The initial vector was a phishing email, then there was a malicious attachment, and then there was PowerShell execution. This might even be too much, but okay, they included it. The business impact is that there were 3 critical business applications offline for 4 hours. The estimated revenue impact was 1.2 million, meaning I guess that we lost 1.2 million in revenue. There is no confirmed data exfiltration at this time. The current status is that we have containment achieved at 9:30. So 8:45 it happened, I guess. So at 9:30, I'm assuming on the same date, we achieved containment, which was network segmentation. We completed eradication. We re-imaged our host and we removed persistence. We had recovery that is currently in progress, so we're trying to restore from all of our systems from clean backups, and we're continuously monitoring to make sure that there's no reinfection that is taking place. The key metrics is that it took us 12 minutes to identify it, it took us 45 minutes to contain it, and it took an approximately 48 hours to close the case, right? So these are the key metrics. Recommendations immediately is to have mandatory phishing training refresher so that everybody's aware that they should not be clicking on these phishing emails. In the short term, we want to update our EDR rules for this specific ransomware strain. And strategically, we want to implement application allow listing on critical servers, meaning just block off certain applications from even running on these servers and only allow a limited number of applications that are absolutely necessary to be running on these critical servers so that we don't lose critical servers, so that we don't lose $1.2 million in revenue in a span of 4 days, right? Which brings us to our last set of practice questions for Chapter 12, Episode 12 on incident reporting and communication. And just as a refresher, we're going to have multiple choice and scenario-based questions. We want to analyze the question to pay attention to what the question is actually asking us, and we want to use critical thinking to deploy, process of elimination to eliminate all of the incorrect answers, and then try to narrow down what the most obvious correct answer might be. These things are not going to be identical to what you're going to see inside of the exam. We are prohibited from sharing the actual questions, and the questions aren't even out yet. It's just to prepare you so that you can learn how to think. For the multiple choice, we're just going to go through them together. For the incident, for the scenario-based questions, I'm going to read it. I want you to pause it, drop a comment below as to what you would do for that scenario, and then we will chime in on each other's comments and see what type of questions or what type of responses we can all come up with, just so we can get like really good responses and get the wheels turning in our brain and really get some really good thinking going. So the first question: the primary purpose of an executive summary during an active incident is to list every technical detail, provide a high-level overview, document chain of custody, replace the need for technical reports. So it actually does replace the need for technical reports, but that's not the primary purpose. So that is kind of relevant, but it's not the actual answer. We're not documenting chain of custody. This has nothing to do with the executive summary. This has more to do for law enforcement and for investigators and things like that. We're also not listing every technical detail because they don't need to know all that stuff. Most of them don't even have the capacity to process all of the technical details. So we are providing a high-level view of the impact status and the next steps. Which metric measures the time from incident declaration to full resolution? So phishing click rate is not it. That is a key metric. We are looking at that, but that's definitely not it. The mean time to identify is when we actually declare the incident. So then the question says from declaration, which is from identification. So this would not be the measurement. It's also not full resolution where we say we're going to contain it, because containment is not full resolution. Containment is, okay, we've stopped the spread. We still need to eradicate it. We still need to recover our systems, which means that we need to mean time to close. That's what that full resolution means. In the 2025 MGM Resorts ransomware case, what communication failure contributed to prolonged impact? And so poor shift handovers was what we talked about in the context of incident reporting, was that shift handovers that were done incorrectly and poorly. Over-reporting to regulators was not it. No executive brief, excessive technical detailing reports, all of these things were not it. It seemed to be that there was barely any kind of reporting taking place, and we would say poor shift handovers was the answer. Shift handovers should always include only resolved incidents, current status, active. Okay, this is obviously the answer. Current status, active incidents, etc. Full forensic report is not done in shift handovers because we are not a part of the forensic team, unless we're actually a part of the forensic team, in which we would send the current status, active incident, all that stuff. Employee performance reviews has nothing to do with the context of cybersecurity. It's more management and human relations, HR. So it has nothing to do with us here either. So the answer would be B. SEC regulations require disclosure of material cybersecurity incidents within 4 business days. B is obviously wrong. There is no specific time. That's obviously wrong because SEC will have a very dedicated and explicit amount of time. And so 4 business days would be it. A good communication plan during an incident should include only internal communications, technical CVE details, who needs to know what, when, and how, nothing, handle everything. Okay, no, that's not it. That's definitely not it. Technical CVE details only. When we see the word only, that's a red flag. That's not it either. Only internal communications, also a red flag because it has the word only in it. That's not it either. So good communication plan during an incident should include who needs to know what, when, and how, internal, external, and the regulators. Very good. Mean time to contain is most important because it measures how quickly we find vulnerabilities. No, that would be mean time to identify. It directly correlates with reducing blast radius and business impact. That is absolutely the answer. It tracks patch compliance. Also not it, because we're not tracking compliance with this. We're trying to contain the virus from spreading. It replaces root cause analysis. That is not the case. We're not replacing. That's another one of those words, like it replaces such and such. That's very much a red flag word as well. So that's definitely not what is happening. It directly correlates with reducing blast radius and business impact. Lessons learned from an incident should be documented in the executive summary only. Again, keyword right there, no. The post-incident report and used to update playbook rules, yes. Never documented, also not the answer. Only for major breaches, also not the answer. So never documented, also not the answer. That's another one of those red flag words. Only is another one of those red flag words. So the post-incident report and used to update playbook rules is where we do lessons learned. Phishing rates are a key incident metric because they indicate end user security awareness. Yes, that would be an answer. They measure SOC alert volume. No. They track patch speed. Also no. They replace vulnerability scanning. So again, replace. No, that's not the case. They don't replace vulnerability scanning. This is a phishing rate where how many people are clicking on phishing links inside of an email. Has nothing to do with vulnerability scanning. They don't track patch speed. They also don't measure the alert volume of a SOC. So the only thing that they do is that they indicate the end user's security awareness level because they're clicking on these links inside of the email. When declaring an incident, the first action is usually to wait for executive approval. No. Erase all evidence. Absolutely not. Immediately release a public statement. Absolutely not. Document it in case management system and activate the escalation tree. That's definitely the case. You do not immediately release a public statement. You're out of your mind. You immediately do not really, or at all. You don't erase evidence at all. And you don't need to wait for an executive to approve because those guys are very hard to reach. So we need to be proactive and we need to get ahead of the threat at hand. So we need to document that we have actually an incident going on and then activate the escalation matrix so that we know who to contact, who needs to know what's the call tree look like, so on and so forth. In a ransomware incident, the executive brief should emphasize every PowerShell command executed, no. Business revenue impact, current status and recovery timeline, yes. Full list of IOCs, no. Technical forensic details, no. So technical details don't need to go to the executives. A full list of anything doesn't need to go to executives. Every PowerShell command, just being, again, a full list of PowerShell commands, does not need to go to the executives. They need to know that maybe PowerShell, like in that mock brief that we saw, it executed something on PowerShell. They don't need to know every command that was executed. They need to know the business and revenue impact, current status, and recovery timeline. Okay, so here's the first scenario. Pause it and drop your answer in the comments so that we can all review it together and chime in on each other's answers. I will give my version of this and hopefully it's a good one. Before you listen to my version, pause the video, drop the answer, and then go ahead and play the video again so that you can kind of see what I said. So A ransomware incident has been contained and eradicated. You are preparing the executive brief. List the 5 key sections you would include. Explain why business impact should be emphasized over technical details. So the business impact should be emphasized because most executives are not aware of technical jargon, so they don't need to know technical details. The 5 key sections I would include would be the overview, what happened, when it happened, how it happened, why it happened. So what was the vulnerability that was taken advantage of? What would be the next steps and what we're doing currently? I think that's probably more than 5, but those would be the 5 key sections that I would include. During a 24/7 SOC shift change, an active data exfiltration incident is ongoing. List 4 critical pieces of information that must be included in the shift handover. Why is structured handover critical in this situation? So why it's important is because everybody needs to be brought up to speed because we're actually dealing with an ongoing incident that's taking place. So everybody needs to be fully aware of what's going on, and there needs to be some kind of a structured template as to the information that we should be passing on to everybody. Now, the 4 critical pieces of information is that this is what the status is. This is what we're dealing with right now. This is what happened. These are the indicators that we're keeping in mind and we're keeping an eye out on. This is the current phase that we're in to deal with this. And we have, whether or not we've stopped it or whether or not we haven't stopped it, it's still ongoing. All of those things need to be taking place. This is who's involved. These are the teams that are involved, the management staff, and whoever is involved as well. So that's probably more than 4, but I was kind of just ranting and rambling. Your organization experienced a BEC incident, business email compromise incident, that resulted in a $250,000 unauthorized wire transfer. So this is already taking place. So what are the 3 main audiences you must communicate with? Outline the high-level content you would include for each audience. So the 3 main audiences, one of them would be obviously the financial team, letting them know that this took place and it was fraudulent. The next one would be the executive team, letting them know that this took place and it was fraudulent. And one of them, somebody on the executive team, did something that led to this behavior because their email was compromised. So we need to train them again to know that they shouldn't be doing something that would do this for them. And the other one would probably be, I think I already mentioned the financial team, but the financial team and the legal team, those teams definitely need to be involved because we have now suffered a $250,000 financial loss. And then we also need to communicate with law enforcement to let them know that we just got robbed for $250,000, and maybe even let the legal team know. And I think I already mentioned that as well, but maybe let the PR team know so that they know how to communicate it if we need to disclose it to the public or something along those lines. But definitely law enforcement, definitely the financial team, and definitely the C-suite team to let them all know that what's taking place and how we need to proceed from here on out. So that's it. That's the last one. That was the last question that we had for all of our practice questions. And so if we were to look at this, there are 319 slides. So I should say 318. And then from 318, we also had the intros to each of the sections. So we can divide or we can subtract 4 slides. So that would be 314. Well, actually, no, because a lot of these things didn't have answers. So I can't say for sure how many questions that we had. But I think we for sure had more than 150 questions. I can tell you that much. So that's a lot of questions. We had a lot of stuff that we covered. If you would like to get that document with the practice questions, and if you would like to get the book that I'm reading from for our lecture elements, and if you'd like to get the incident executive brief template, the shift handover template, lessons learned, the Python scripts that we developed in earlier episodes, and all the Python scripts that I've already developed for our members, all of the course contents and practice questions from all the other CompTIA courses that we have, and everything else. There are so many things that we have. I would like for you to consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. The Hackaholics Anonymous members that currently exist, they already should have, you already do have the links to all of these things in the members area. So I will be dropping those. I will have already dropped them in the members area so you can get access to them. And you can just go and download them. So as long as you're an agent level member or above, so an agent, guardian, or a master, you'll get access to all of these things, plus all past content and future content as well. So if you have not done so already, I very much encourage you to consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. If you found value in this video and this video training series, and if you would like to get more of these videos in the future, then I encourage you to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. If you have any questions about what we talked about today or this entire series, if you have your responses to those scenario-based questions, then I encourage you to drop a comment below. And of course, if you have not done so already, make sure that you check out Hackaholics Anonymous. But that's pretty much it for the course today. I think I might do a completely separate video just for the conclusion and an overview and some best practices for the examination and reviewing the resources that are available to you, the labs and all of those things. I will most likely do a conclusion video. So I'll see you in the conclusion video, but this is officially the last lecture video for this training series. And if you've made it this far, I'm very proud of you. And I think you should be proud of yourself too. And again, if you would like to get more trainings like this one and to get more videos on Pentest Plus, SOC Level 1 for 2026, AI for cybersecurity, etc., 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 I encourage you to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. And of course, if you're interested in all of the exclusives and to advance your education, then I encourage you to also check out Hackaholics Anonymous. To get access to the CYSA Plus book, the practice questions, the exclusive episode downloads, and to get access to the CompTIA Linux Plus, Network Plus, Pentest Plus, and Security Plus course contents, and to get access to me via Discord plus all the future perks and content rollouts, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, agent, guardian, and master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below. It's the link that says Join Hackaholics Anonymous. I look forward to seeing you in the Discord chats. If not, I look forward to seeing you in the comment section. Until then, happy hacking and stay out of trouble. It's your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers, your favorite network and system attacker / protector. If no one else loves you, Hank loves you. Love, peace, and chicken grease. And I will see you in the next training series later.